How far will the cancel culture go? Is there anything that is so, dare I say, sacred to the American people that even the left would hold back? Nope. Not if it's outside of their ideological arena. Not if it's outside of what they like, what the left, so communism, fine. Lenin, Marx, Stalin, whatever, fine. Che Guevara, fine. That's no problem. But some have said, in jest, what are they going to do? Come for Jesus next? Because you got to ask the question, was Jesus really strong enough on trans rights back in the day? He didn't talk about it. There's nothing in the Bible about trans rights that I've seen. So people raise this to try to establish the outer realm, if you will, the outer limit of the extent of the absurdity here. And it is so instructive that as you try to do that now, I often say the left is beyond parody. And I mean it. I'm saying that actually is true, because when I try to parody the left, I fail because they're that crazy. I'll say, oh my gosh, what's going to be next? Go back to 2017. There was the beginning of this statue pull down movement, and people were saying things like they're going to come for the founders, they're going to come for Washington and Jefferson, and it's going to happen. Oh no, they won't. Oh yes, they will, and they currently are doing so. But what about statues of Jesus? And this started. I saw this conversation as it was happening online between various journos and thought leaders and influencers and, whoever and whatever. They said, well, what about Jesus? Are you going to come for Jesus statues too? Is Jesus part of the patriarchy? I mean, in a sense, he, Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. I mean, I guess he is the patriarchy. But are they really going to come after Jesus? And the answer is yes, according to some leftists. Sean King, Torre, a gentleman who is it was not very gentlemanly at all from what I understand from people who have worked with him, but who is only known by one name. I thought that was mostly what you'd have with, soccer players. But anyway, he said, what is the parody here? This is about, I'm sorry, let me take you through this discussion because I have all of it. Sean King says, yes, I think the statues of the white European they claim is Jesus should also come down. This is perhaps the most well-known BLM voice out there, right? I mean, Sean King, who, if you go back into his background and look around a little bit, you'll just go, I cannot believe that this is really the situation that we're all dealing. I cannot believe that this guy is able to get away with this, but I think the statues of the white European they claim is Jesus should also come down. They are a form of white supremacy, he writes, always have been. In the Bible, when the family of Jesus wanted to hide and blend in, guess where they went? Egypt, not Denmark. Tear them down. Now, Charlie Sykes, who is one of these narcissistic, sanctimonious, former conservative idiots who has built a career now trashing Trump and everybody who supports Trump because he wasn't important enough in the Trump era. So it's all about him. He's a surly and deeply unimpressive fellow. I don't know why anybody ever listened to him on radio in Wisconsin or Minnesota or wherever he had a show that was on a couple of stations. But he said, I know we live in a post-parody world, but please tell me this is parody. So he's willing to say, come on, guys, we're not really going to, I know Trump is worse than Hitler and all that, but we're not really going to have the left and the Democrats now tell us they're going to tear down Jesus statues. And then Mr. Torre, who, just as an interesting side note, is very concerned with social justice issues and class warfare in general. I believe he attended the elite Milton Academy boarding school, which I think costs something like $50,000 a year. And yes, so, but, that's fine. I just think it's interesting that somebody is so concerned with the struggle of those who are not wealthy, those who are in different oppressed classes, happened to benefit substantially in his academic rise from going to a very, very elite institution. You see this a lot. People that are lecturing everybody else about the oppressed, but they're the first one to wave their, degree from Yale. If we're going to keep calling it Yale, they'll wave these degrees in your face, but also then lecture you on how much they understand the struggle. And you sit here and say, where is the gratitude for the greatness of American society that? Anyway, but Mr. Torre says, Charlie, where is the parody here? Jesus looked a lot more like me than the blonde, blue-eyed person we see. That Europeanized vision of Jesus is a form of, get ready for it, white supremacy. The statues of him perpetuate that. What part of that can you disagree with? Well, see, this is very interesting because there are different cultures all over the world where Christianity has spread. And there are, in fact, many different versions of Jesus that appear. And I have friends who will tell you that if you go, for example, to some churches in Korea, Jesus may look more like someone of Asian descent. I went online right before I came on here to see how many statues there are of black Jesus that you can buy, and there's merchandise, and it's all over the place. People have many different representations of Jesus. Oh, but if Jesus... And I don't even know if they would understand this on the left or they would care, but we often, at least I can speak to the Catholic tradition, Jesus, the spread of Christianity throughout Europe, and the Renaissance, and then the Reformation, and Jesus evolved in the depiction to be more like, to resemble more the population of Europe during the Renaissance, and then some of the most famous sculptures and most famous statues and paintings were representative of that. So, when Michelangelo is painting the Sistine Chapel and Jesus looks like a Northern Italian, it's not white supremacy. It's because he was trying to show a depiction of Jesus that would resonate with the people of Italy at the time. But can the Sistine Chapel then really stay? I want to take their logic. I want to take the left's logic to its real end here. Can the Sistine Chapel stay? Well, not if the depictions of Jesus look as they do, because we're told that this is now white supremacy. So does that statue come down? Does that statue all of a sudden no longer, or rather, does that incredible work of art, I should say. I mean, statue as a general term here. I don't know what people really think of this. I don't know where the left wants to take this. But it's insane. It's insane. I mean, that much we've all established. Now you're gonna start trying to tear down Jesus statues now. And so we don't know what Jesus looked like. We only have depictions of him through the ages, through Christian sculptors and artists. We have no idea what Jesus actually looked like. He was Jewish, so he might have looked like what we think of perhaps as a Jew from the Eastern Mediterranean region. I mean, we don't really know, but who cares? The point is that he's the Son of God. The point is that he is the Savior for Christians and that he has brought everlasting life to humanity. It's not about what sculptors in, Italy made him look like 500 years ago, but cancel everything. There's always room for another cancellation. There's always room to tear down more. There is nothing, when I say there's nothing sacred to the left, I actually mean often sacred. Sacred. Although I don't think that there will be a big move on the left anytime soon to be coming to grips with, say, the founder of a religion who had slaves and executed captives in war, captured in war, and also might have married somebody who was very young. I don't think that there will be any coming to grips with that history. It's only what is useful to tear down Western civilization. We see this, we understand this, and we have to know what the enemy is planning here, so to speak, if we are going to confront them on the battlefield of ideas and win. But don't think that anything is sacred. There is nothing that they will not tear down if they can, and we'll continue to see this as it is. I also want to note, during the French Revolution, which you're hearing talked about a lot now because these mobs on the street, they do have a Jacobin vibe. They do feel very similar to those who were storming the Bastille back in the day, which did not end well for the people inside the Bastille, I will have you know. But whereas the sacred principles of liberty and equality, this was a law passed by the French Commune back in, I think it was 1790. Whereas the sacred principles of liberty and equality will not permit the existence of monuments raised to ostentation, prejudice, and tyranny to continue to offend the eyes of the French people, whereas the bronze in these monuments can be converted into cannon for the defense of la patrie, it is decreed all statues, bas reliefs, inscriptions, and other monuments made of bronze or other metals which exist in public squares, gardens, parks, public buildings will be removed by the communes. The second article provided for the conversion of this metal into cannon. All monuments containing traces of feudalism of whatever nature that still remain in churches or other public places, and even those in private homes, shall, without the slightest delay, be destroyed by the communes. That's right. First they came for the monuments, destroyed those, and then they renamed a square Place de la Révolution, and then they set up something called La Guillotine, and then they started lopping people's heads off.
I was covering the rally live on Saturday when he said that, and I remember my heart sort of sank right away. I told them to slow down the testing. That's what he said. First of all, it made my heart sink because it's the one thing really that we need to be doing more of to try and get ourselves out of this mess. It's the one thing that many countries have done well that has helped their case counts be in the hundreds, not the thousands, hundreds of thousands. But also, there was always this idea that we did not do testing early here. We were behind the ball. When that cruise ship came in, the president said at that point, why do I want to test all those people? Those are going to make my numbers look bad. I mean, there was always this, but it was always sort of, seemingly in jest maybe at the time. But then when he said it again at the rally, my heart sank because I thought, has he been telling people to slow down testing? Mm-hmm. I'm curious what the coronavirus task force would say to that.
He's not telling people to test less. Do we have to go through this? He's not telling people don't get tested for coronavirus. I went to the White House a month ago. Everybody going into the White House has to get tested. I mean, come on, man. He's not saying this, but the politics of COVID-19 have come back with a vengeance. After the hundreds of thousands of people out in the streets spreading COVID to each other, but no big deal because that was for social justice, right? We're supposed to not care very much about that. We're supposed to think that doesn't matter, or it was justified. It was justified. That's, who needs social distancing when you have social justice? Okay. Now we're hearing all of this about the rise in COVID-19. I would want to understand something. Why aren't we in New York, where we had the worst cases of this, why aren't we seeing a resurgence? We're going into greater openness and more people out there. We haven't seen any resurgence. So why is it that these states, Texas and Florida, we're being told there's a difference between knowing that there are more cases and actually being in a worse place fighting against this pandemic, right? That's something the media is just pretending is a distinction that they can't grasp at all, but they should be able to. They should be able to. But right now, this is all about the mood of the country, and all they have to do is drag this out. They're not going to get a full-scale national lockdown again before the election. They know that. But if they can just, another month of delay in New York, maybe a rollback in Florida, if they can start to get that to happen, then the talking points from the Democrats write themselves. Here is what we know. First of all, dexamethasone, which is a very old drug, not expensive, it's a steroid, has been shown to be effective in treating. And there's been much less fanfare around this. There was a lot of talk about remdesivir, which did not have quite as gold standard a study as what we've seen with dexamethasone. Dexamethasone is a steroid, and it seems to show significantly decreased mortality for those who have a severe case of this disease of COVID-19. So that's good news. The treatment of this has gotten better. The panic around this for doctors and medical professionals is substantially less than it was. Hospitals are not overwhelmed. There's certainly things to be pleased with here and look at as progress. I know that, so remdesivir is talked about. It's not, they need to do a little more study on that one. And that's also intravenous, whereas dexamethasone is a pill that you can take, which is much easier, obviously. Now we get to the hydroxychloroquine, which has fallen off, but hydroxychloroquine was used for very, very sick patients when really the use case for that from the very earliest days was supposed to be as a prophylaxis against COVID-19 infection. And I have not seen studies on that, but the studies on it for the treatment of people in the hospital so far have not been conclusive of any substantial benefit. But, everyone who's thinking that there's going to be a vaccine for this and that's the only way out, let's hope. Let's hope that vaccine comes soon. But we have to go about our lives anyway. We cannot put the world on hold in the hopes that the medical community, which has done, the public health community really, that's the thing. It's not COVID-19 researchers working for big companies that were in this because they're just trying to actually do useful work. It's I'm an epidemiologist who's at the University of such and such, and I want to go on MSNBC. Those people came out, and after all of you can't go outside, you can't go to a family member's funeral, no go to restaurants, no graduations, all this stuff, to say, well, it's really important that we have all these protests happening. And so even if there's a risk of COVID-19, I think for public health, some of them are saying it's good for public health because of the ending of systemic racism that these protests would do, which we all know is preposterous. But there's been a real lack, or rather a real damage done to the trust that we can have in these public health experts. And that's not going to change anytime soon. But they're now going to turn to Dr. Fauci again. He's going to come out and say, look, we're heading maybe second wave, maybe third wave. Mitigation efforts need to return. We don't want to have a rollback of the mitigation. So, we're not clear yet. The data tells us to keep working on the mitigation of data and, all that stuff. We're going to get back to that now. Does this guy have any answers? No, other than stop living your life and hide under your bed. That's not that helpful. Working from home is driving up the worst type of cybercrime, home title theft. We're doing it all from home these days. Working, banking, video conferences, meal deliveries, and shopping. Cyber criminals are targeting our homes because of this. Actually, they want the money they can get by taking out loans against your home. The crime is home title theft, and the FBI has been warning homeowners about it a lot. Home Title Lock is how you protect your home from cyber thieves. Your home's legal title's online where they can find it and forge your signature stating you sold your home to them. Then they'll take out loans on your home and leave you deep in debt. Banks, insurance, and basic identity theft services don't protect you from this. You've got to go with Home Title Lock to put a virtual barrier around your home's title. Protect your home now. Go to HomeTitleLock.com, code BUCK. That's right, HomeTitleLock.com, and use code BUCK today to get 30 free days of protection to help you through this crisis. You can register your address right now to see if you're already a victim. Go to HomeTitleLock.com and use code BUCK for 30 free days of protection to help you right now. That's code BUCK at HomeTitleLock.com. These are days when people who will speak about these issues fearlessly and honestly are in short supply, but I managed to find one for your listening and viewing entertainment. We have Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire joining us right now. He's the host of the Matt Walsh Show, also has a great blog. Mr. Walsh, good to have you back.
Hey, Buck. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
So you got quite a shout out from Tucker on his show last night on Fox News, and also the president retweeted a thread that you've put out online. Tell me about what this thread shows. And now the president has obviously shared it with his 80 million plus followers. Tucker told his 4 million viewers last night about it. What's in the thread and what has been the response?
Yeah, and I appreciate Tucker, as being one of the guy with his platform. There aren't many people with his platform that are willing to talk about these things, so I appreciate that. It was a thread. The thing that the president retweeted was video of a Macy's employee, a white Macy's employee, being just brutally assaulted by a black man, in the middle of Macy's, and it was all on film. And this is part of a trend. This has been happening more and more recently. And so, in a separate thread, I provided other examples of white people being assaulted. Oftentimes, just we say brutal, and sometimes we always describe assaults as brutal. But some of these things are just really tough to watch. I mean, you've got the Macy's employee was on the ground just begging while the guy's pummeling him, and so things like that. And this is happening. Nobody's talking about it. What I've discovered is, and of course I'm not surprised, is that if you even bring it up, if you simply say, hey, this is happening, it's not good, you're racist for that somehow. So that's what I've discovered over the last couple of days.
I've even seen some conservatives, Matt, who recoil from the sharing of videos of the ones that you have, for example, of people just being randomly assaulted. But also, there is clearly an effort underway to create a right-wing, vehicular weapon narrative when what we have are all these videos of protesters mobbing cars, shattering windshields, trying to rip people out of the vehicles, and they drive away. I keep saying this. If I'm in the car solo, and definitely if I have any of my family in there, and an angry mob is bashing my windshield, I don't want to hurt anybody, but I'm hitting the accelerator. The mainstream media, though, CNN and others, don't even show these videos. Why?
Yeah, and that's all of these videos. It's about we should be showing them, and the only reason, it's not about trying to build our own narrative. I'm not interested in any narrative. I'm just interested in people knowing the truth. When it comes to the cars, yeah, if someone is if a mob of people are swarming your car, the last thing you should do is stop for them. It's just about your safety, the safety of your children. So you're going to keep going. And with these other videos, listen, anyone that's squeamish about it, just imagine, with the Macy's video, imagine the races are reversed and you've got a white man beating a black Macy's employee while he's on the ground begging. Is there any doubt that would be shared all over the place? Would anyone feel weird about sharing it? So I've seen some of the same comments you're talking about from even conservative pundits saying, well, why are we sharing this? What do you mean, why are we sharing it? You wouldn't be saying that if we reverse the races. So why should we share it? These are victims that are being victimized, and we should talk about it, especially when in some of these cases, nobody's even been arrested for doing it. So I think that maybe justice should be done.
I think that the grounds upon which the left and the right can assume there is agreement has shrunk to very, very little. I mean, even things like violence against people, violence against innocent people is bad. Well, no, that's not actually something you can get the whole left to sign on for, because they'll tell you, well, it depends. Is this in an area where there was systemic discrimination or historic racism, and that has to be taken into account? Well, I mean, if that's the case, how is anyone held to account for anything anymore? I mean, you can always come up with some narrative of what some other person at some other time period did that can justify hateful actions today. And just the immorality, Matt, and the incoherence of this is kind of mind-boggling to me right now.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so hard to engage with, because there's nothing rational about it. So there's nothing really. If you're trying to have a rational dialogue, there's no common ground to find. You're talking to someone who's basing this entirely on emotion. Obviously, there is no coherent defense you could offer for the idea that it's okay to assault someone, to brutalize them because of crimes that were committed by other people in history. The idea that some random guy at Macy's or wherever else is responsible for that is completely insane. And the other thing that I've heard, there's from the left, you'll get, when it comes to clearly innocent people being assaulted, what they'll do is they'll say, well, we have to understand the people that are the aggressors. We have to understand where they're coming from. But then often there's this assumption, like with the Macy's guy, the claim was that he said the N-word, which is totally false. He didn't. That was fabricated. But what we've discovered is that what the left is saying is, if you do say a word like that, a bad word, then yeah, we're totally on board for you getting beaten. Now, I mean, call me crazy, but the N word is bad. You shouldn't say it. But even if someone does say that, that doesn't mean you can assault them. I thought aren't we all on the same page there? There is no word a person could say, to however bad it may be, that would justify felony assault against them. But that's not common ground anymore.
We're speaking to Matt Walsh, host of the Matt Walsh Show, and he's over at the Daily Wire. And look, you guys are one of the few places, there's the Federalist. There are a few places these days where it feels like people will engage with these ideas without the constant throat clearing about, well, the protesters have legitimate grievances, and the hand wringing about, systemic racism. I'm like, they've got white dudes with man buns standing in front of black police officers in D.C. yelling about how the black officer's family should be ashamed of him, and we're supposed to believe that this movement is really about oppressed minorities. I mean, it's just it defies logic, it defies common sense. It's completely insane. But to your willingness, Matt, to share things that then people say, why would you share this? I've noticed this trend of people that share video of day-to-day interactions where they're really trying to catch someone in something where they can then call them a racist and then maybe dox them and ruin their life. And this is treated by the media as some kind of a sport now.
Yeah. This doxing and humiliation of people, especially people that are claimed to have committed some sort of racial slight, it's very disturbing. I mean, the latest thing today, this woman, the viral video of a woman being harassed because she supposedly flipped somebody off in traffic, and and supposedly said a racial slur, which I don't believe for a second, by the way. But even if she said it, I mean, this guy follows her back to her house, puts her on video, takes her license plate, her address, what her house looks like. He's trying to get this woman killed. And in this environment, you can get someone killed doing that. And the left is just openly applauding this kind of behavior. Like, so now we're saying that a man has a right to follow a woman back to her house if she makes a gesture towards him that he doesn't like. Well, this is incite,
and as you point out, incite violence against her. Really, I mean, because now she's going to be a target for hate, the violations of privacy here. And what's truly stunning to me, first of all, the feminists, that's all. There's all this silence about the term Karen and the humiliation of what are generally, not that this matters, but liberal white women in some of these videos, in some of this context. And everyone's throwing on this term Karen all the time. And I think it's interesting that liberals are silent upon what feels sometimes like this, men who are clearly humiliating women in the public sphere. They have no problem with that at all. But you also, Matt, have to, when you see these videos, there's a clear lack of caring about what the initial facts are before the media has already ruined this person. And this woman will probably get fired. I mean, I'd say that's a good chance that if her workplace finds out about this video, even if she didn't do anything. And by the way, I've flipped off plenty of people. I'm a nice guy. I'm polite. But, in traffic, sometimes here in New York, things happen. But as you say, she didn't. There's no evidence she said a racial slur. This guy has what's the guy's Twitter handle? I mean, it's something.
Yeah, his Twitter handle is literally white people hate. That he's advertising his hate for white people. And this is what he does, apparently. He's a BLM activist, and he's constantly claiming that people are saying racial slurs. And he's putting it on video, trying to go viral.
Right. No one called him a racial slur. I know we're not allowed to actually make intelligent judgments about these things, Matt, but no one called him a racial slur. And this woman might actually face severe consequences. I want to ask you, and everyone should check out the Matt Walsh Show, but just one more for you, Matt. This situation of this NASCAR driver, Bubba Wallace, the allegation that a noose was put in his garage stall. I keep asking, where is the photo of the noose? I'm not saying that this is a hoax. I'm just saying, where's the photo of the noose? Where are you on this?
Yeah, I agree with you. They say absence of evidence is not evidence, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. That's the phrase. But I think sometimes it is, because when there should be, in this case, there should be evidence, really good evidence that would be easily provided with a photo of the noose. Also, there's going to be, these are highly secure areas. There's going to be security camera footage everywhere. Whoever did it, if it was done at all, it's going to be on camera. So at a minimum, we should have a photo of the noose by now, if not video of somebody putting it up. We have none of those things. It's been a couple days now. It's very strange, especially when you have Bubba Wallace and, the president of NASCAR. They're out in the media being asked about these hoax theories, and they're talking about how hurt and offended they are by it. But if you're hurt and offended, then you could easily dispel the hoaxes and also shame people that have speculated it might be a hoax by just saying, well, here it is. Here's the news. And the fact that they're not doing that is very, very suspicious to me. But we also have to, this doesn't necessarily mean it was a totally staged thing. It could be that it was something misinterpreted, and then NASCAR jumped on board with it, and now they're going to be too embarrassed to say never mind. So there's all kinds of explanations for it potentially. But
there have been, to your point about that, Matt, there have been two prominent and already dispelled cases where people thought they called it in as a hate crime, and then they found, I'm sure the one in Oakland and then one here in New York City in Marcus Garvey Park. One was a rope used to hoist construction material. The construction boss just said, yeah, we just, didn't clean up the site perfectly, but that's all that was. And the one in Oakland was a guy who was using ropes, 5 ropes that weren't nooses, by the way, for exercise purposes, who was a black guy who came forward and said this.
Yeah, and not only that, but in the Oakland case, even after they had the protests out saying there's a noose, the black guy comes out and says, no, it's not a noose, I put it there. They still kept protesting, and the mayor of Oakland came out and said that the intention doesn't matter. It's still, for some intention doesn't matter with hate crimes now. It's that are her words exactly. And we talk about being irrational and not being able to engage. Well, if that's what we're being told, if your intention doesn't matter with a hate crime anymore, then where do you go from that? Because a hate crime is supposed to be all about intention. That's literally the only thing that matters with a hate crime. But that's where we are now, apparently.
Matt Walsh, everybody, check out the Matt Walsh Show. Read his stuff over at the Daily Wire. Mr. Walsh, always good to have you, sir. Stay safe.
Thanks, Buck.
Karen, are you okay?
I don't understand what happened.
Can you explain to me calmly?
No, because you're attacking me right now.
I'm not attacking you. Ma'am, you flicked me off.
You're ready to take it.
Guys, this is her license plate number. She lives here. This is her address.
This is not true. No.
Karen, you flipped me off.
No,
you cut me off and flipped me off, and now you're playing the victim. Ma'am, would you like to calm down?
No, you're attacking me right now without even.
Guys, she flipped me off.
That's the audio of what Matt Walsh and I were talking about before. It goes on. It's this guy, this Black Lives Matter activist is just clearly a really vicious person, turning what is under any normal circumstances. Yeah, people cut each other off on the road. I'm not saying it's like a nice thing to do. And people sometimes, give the one finger salute when there's traffic and they're getting a little tense about whatever. I don't believe him when he claims that there was a racial slur, because this guy, all he does is try to try to find incidents of racial slurs being thrown at him and get a lot of attention. But do you think that the media stops to verify any of this beforehand? No, they'll big blue checks on Twitter with large followings, people that have big platforms in the media sphere. They will share all this stuff, and this woman's life, her reputation will be ruined before the facts even can come out, before we even know anything. And all you have to do is spend 2 minutes looking at the social media account of the guy who's put this stuff up there. And this video has been viewed millions of times, okay? This woman is clearly in deep psychological duress, understandably from the perspective of now she's going to be this guy. This is all he does. He goes and he shares videos of people, and then there's a pile-on online. And I bring this to your attention because I want everyone listening to this to understand the mob will come for you too. And you could say, oh no, Buck, and I live in a red part of a state and my neighbors are good people and whatever. Do you ever go fly in a plane somewhere else in the country? Not these days, but people generally do. You got to go visit relatives in some city somewhere. Don't think just because your community isn't full of psycho left-wing activists that you're not going to come into contact with. It's like, and by the way, if there is a place where there aren't psychotic left-wing activists, I'd like to know where that is. Start thinking about setting up the mobile freedom hut there. But the truth is, you'll be dealing with this anywhere in the country, and it doesn't matter if you're a private person. It doesn't matter if you live your life without your politics out in the public sphere. They'll come for you. I'm not saying they're going to come for every single one of you, but they don't have to either. You're not immune from the cancel mob just because you're a private person. In fact, they recognize as part of the tactics, just like tearing down the statues is a tactic, they recognize that the destruction of individuals who aren't famous or prominent or politicians or in the media, that sends an even more potent message, which is if you do not become part of this hive mind, if you're not part of the Borg, Star Trek reference, right? If you're not part of the collective of the left and do what we say and accept our authoritarianism and be a part of this movement to destroy free thought and freedom, because ultimately that is what the left is trying to do here, they might come for you too. And your workplace, if you work for a big company, some of you I know work for yourselves, or you work, you own a small company or work at a small company where you might be better protected from this kind of cancel culture nonsense. But if you work for any big corporation, when the cancel mob comes for you, you're done. They're going to fire you. They're going to fire you because we can't handle this and everything else. There is a plague of cowardice in this country right now. It is a plague. It is all over the place. And people in corporate America, who are, especially if they've, making good money and they're fat and happy, so to speak, they all they want is, they just want the cash to keep flowing. They want to keep their job. They don't care about what's happening in the country. They're not going to do anything. And I'm talking about people who, if they got fired, they wouldn't have to work again. Or maybe they've got 5 or 10 years to figure out their next move. There are a lot of people like that in corporate America. But you know what? Still cowards. Still cowards. And in the media, including conservative media.